Welcome back to Outsiders. I'm Caroline Marcus here today with Gentile James Morrow and Rabbi Rowan Dean. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't recognise this country anymore. This isn't the Australia we know and love. So what does it remind you of? 1930s Germany, maybe? The terror enclave that is Gaza? Yep, getting warmer. But not a supposedly freedom-loving, democratic Western nation. If this past week has been proof of anything, it's that the extremism and hatred that's been tolerated on our streets week after week, it has nothing to do with legitimate protest about a conflict more than 12,000 kilometres away. This is what that hatred has culminated in. An attack that has all the hallmarks of a targeted firebombing at the former home of a Jewish leader. Again, something that belongs not in Australia in 2025, but Nazi Germany, our very own Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, where Jewish homes, businesses and synagogues were vandalised and destroyed the year before World War II erupted. Alex Rivchin is the co-CEO of Australia's peak Jewish body and a tireless advocate for the community and the values all Australians should hold dear. His family had moved out of the house. In fact, it doesn't even belong to Jews now. But intelligence has never been a strong point for these thugs. Brain dead and dangerous. It's a chilling combination. Not that their threats will work.
And I can tell you that no fire, no vandalism, no paint, no threats, no intimidation will stop me. I will continue to fulfill my duty to my country, my community, and my people.
And the thing is, this wasn't even the first attack on a Jewish leader to make headlines this week. A 44-year-old man from Western Sydney was the day before arrested and charged by the new Federal Police Antisemitism Task Force, accused of making alleged death threats to another Jewish organisation, the Australian Jewish Association, headed by Dr. David Adler. Now, we don't know yet the exact threat allegedly made, but the group has received several in the past 15 months, like this image of a hangman's noose, accompanied by the warning if the group dares show up at the Senate inquiry to deal with anti-Semitism, they will all Delta Indy Echo die. Our expectations have become so low after more than a year of virtual inaction by authorities that this one arrest surprised everyone. So now we're seeing...
It's refreshing because one of the concerns in the Jewish community since the 7th of October 2023 is that our law enforcement has not been focused, has not been taking action against the numerous anti-Semitic incidents and threats that have occurred across Australia.
So now we're seeing people being targeted, leaders in the Jewish community. And these attacks follow what we've seen in recent days on a Sydney synagogue, a second synagogue the thugs tried to firebomb, and graffiti calling to gas the Jews. I guess until police analysts try to convince us what the vandals really meant to say was, where's the Jews? And of course, there was the firebombing of a Melbourne synagogue early last month, over which there are yet to be any arrests. What mustn't be glossed over is that this latest incident in Dover Heights, a heavily Jewish suburb in eastern Sydney, came after the ceasefire deal had been reached between Israel and Hamas. A deal that's set to come into effect later today. A deal anyone who genuinely cares about Palestinian lives and an end to the conflict should be celebrating, given how disproportionately it rewards their side. Hamas not only gets an end to the war it started, they get more than 22 Palestinian prisoners per innocent Israeli hostage. That's 735 violent prisoners, many of them murderous terrorists, in exchange for 33 innocent children, women and elderly. Likely there's another Yahya Sinwar among that group, already plotting the next October 7. And the continuing violence here should convince anyone still in doubt that these protests were never about peace. These people don't care about Palestinian lives. They don't hate war. They just hate Jews. And by extension, they hate Australia. Never forget, these protests started before Israel even retaliated against October 7. Of course, the more sophisticated activists will try to conceal this truth. Instead, they'll gaslight and use every trick in the book to turn themselves into the victims, like Nasser Mashni, head of the Australian Palestine Advocacy Network.
Do you think there will be less anti-Semitic incidents from here on in?
That's an absurd question, Lee. It's an absurd question to ask me when we've got tens of thousands of Palestinians that are dead. The challenge we have in Australia is not just about anti-Semitism, it's about anti-Palestinian racism.
But the jig is up. It was up when we saw Palestinians celebrate the news of the ceasefire deal by taking to the streets to pledge their allegiance to one of the Hamas masterminds of October 7. And the jig was certainly up when we saw Hamas leader Khalil al-Hayya praise October 7 and vow that the resistance will continue after the ceasefire.
وما حدث في 7 أكتوبر من إعجاز وإنجاز عسكري وإنجاز أمني قامت به نخبة القسام سيبقى مفخرة لشعبنا ومقاومتنا، وسيندحر هذا الاحتلال عن أرضنا وقدسنا ومقدساتنا عما قريب بإذن الله تعالى.
In fact, there's already been a stabbing attack in Tel Aviv that's left an Israeli man seriously injured. We already know a good number of the hostages to be released aren't alive. They'll be coming back as corpses. A high-level IDF reservist who cannot be identified told me our soldiers will remain sitting ducks there for about 42 days. The families don't know if they get a body bag or a live family member back. And there's an expectation female hostages would have been raped, given testimony from already returned hostages. Even the UN, for heaven's sake, was forced to admit it had found clear and convincing information hostages had been raped. And those hostages, even if alive, will come back as shells of the person they once were. Now, there's nothing you wouldn't do if your loved one was a hostage, nothing. But that is an incredibly high price for Israel to pay. I dearly hope that this deal leads to all hostages coming back and lasting peace in Israel and Gaza. But I don't hold my breath. Already the deal is in jeopardy after Israel accused Hamas of missing the deadline to name the first 3 hostages to be released. PM Benjamin Netanyahu said, "We will not move forward with the outline until we receive a list of the hostages to be freed as agreed. Israel will not tolerate violations of the agreement. The sole responsibility lies with Hamas." But I do believe Donald Trump's presidency has signalled a new era, a new strength and moral clarity on Israel that Arab leaders finally fear and respect. Tragically, with our pathetically limp leadership back home, it's clear the violence on our own shores is only really just beginning.
Well, Caroline, that was superb, and I sincerely hope you are wrong about that last point. I do hope the violence is brought to heel in this country, and that will only come with a change of leadership as soon as possible.